This is the Chappell Real Estate Show, episode number 21.
Welcome to the Chappell Real Estate Show, your source for the latest real estate information so you can buy, sell, and invest with the best in Texas. Whether you're a first-time buyer, a current homeowner, or a seasoned investor, you've come to the right place. We're here to simplify all things real estate so you can achieve your goals of property ownership with your hosts, Daniel and Roger Chappell.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Chappell Real Estate Show, your source for the latest real estate information so that you can learn how to buy, sell, and invest with the best. I'm your host, Daniel Chappell, and I'm here with my co-host today, Roger Chappell. How are you doing today, Dad?
Doing great. How are you?
Oh, it's going well. So, it's been a couple of weeks since we've actually released an episode. So, what have you been up to the last couple of weeks? It's been
selling.
So, I mean, how much have you been selling? Where are we at? How much is the team sitting at right now, the last couple of weeks?
Last couple of weeks, we're right around $3 million in total sales. So it's been quite a couple of weeks.
And remind me, more for our listeners than for me, is that buyers, sellers? I mean, we know this market is a seller's market. So buyers, sellers, what's going on?
We've got them both.
We've got it all, folks. We've got it all. So, this market has been absolutely insane. And, I hear from buyer's agents, all the different Facebook groups and stuff that we're a part of online and, just from our relationships in the industry, everybody's having a lot of trouble getting their buyers under contract. And, I'm not saying it's easy for us to get buyers under contract, but I think our knowledge of the market definitely makes it a lot more manageable. What do you think?
I'd say manageable is a good way to put that. But it's just like anything else. We work, we grind, we hustle, we do what we have to do. We educate our buyers, we educate our sellers, and we try to set the appropriate expectations. So, the other thing we do, I think we do better than most, is relationships with the other agents. That goes miles and miles and miles and miles because, as you and I both know, in today's market, it's not always the sales price that makes a deal. You'd be surprised how many deals are made with some of the little intricate details in a contract. So creating the relationships with the other agents allows us to be able to better serve our clients by trying to find out what the seller needs and then delivering that to the seller if it's possible. It just depends. We've got to think outside the box as well. So I think we've been very successful here, especially of late. Due to a number of factors. I think our knowledge in the industry has really helped out a lot. But additionally, I think we've got some buyers now that are truly, I think now, not just us, but across the industry, we're starting to see buyers just getting frustrated with the process and finally starting to take measures into their own hands and being quite aggressive and going and getting these deals. So it's a combination of factors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, too, the number of listings that our team has had has definitely given us a lot of perspective on how to make these offers work for buyers when we're trying to work with other sellers.
I couldn't agree more. I've noticed just in the last 6 months, the number of listings that our team has had has more than doubled what we did the same time last year. In fact, I think it's about tripled what it was this time last year, which to me is fantastic, especially in such a tough market when people don't want to sell because they've got no place to move to. So, yeah, it's kind of tough.
Well, so, it's been a very eventful couple of weeks for the Chappell Realty Group. So, and Lily and I are working on getting under contract on a house. So we found a house that we absolutely love, put in a really aggressive offer, and now we are on our toes waiting to hear back. We should know tomorrow by noon, and I could not be more excited to hear back.
Well, I wanted to actually talk a little bit about that specific offer because not about the details of the offer, but about the entire process itself. So, we were talking about relationships with the other agents and things of that nature. And with this particular agent that we're working with on the other side, she has been over backwards to try to accommodate everybody, from what I can tell. And she's been very communicative with us. It's been very helpful. And I can tell, too, by listening to her, how stressful it is for her on the seller side of it. And that's something that as I was discussing these with her earlier this week, your offer in particular, I got to thinking about how many listing agents today are also working with buyers. And there really aren't as many of them as we think, but those that are truly understand both sides of this equation and how difficult it is for buyers. Because this is not a buyer's market at all. It's very, very tough on buyers. But it's also very tough and stressful for the sellers, too. So, I appreciate the communication that we've had with her. And whether you get the deal or not, it's been fun working with her up to this point. Obviously, I hope we get to do it even further. But, and I actually texted her a little while ago and told her, I said, I'm kind of disappointed. I was hoping we'd have some good news to break on the podcast tonight. But unfortunately, it's just not to be had tonight. We won't find out until tomorrow. So, as I quoted to her, the saga continues. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned, right? Well, so, we actually, as we promised on last week's little tidbit Memorial Day message that we left out, we're going to talk about some Austin statistics that we've kind of put together for you guys. So the Austin Board of Realtors has not yet released their statistics for May, but we did kind of pull some numbers together, and we've got the April statistics that we're going to talk over with you guys. But we also kind of stumbled into another topic that we thought we wanted to kind of bring up today. So, man, I didn't realize how much of a hot button this was going to be when this happened. So I was scrolling through one of the many Instagram pages or Facebook business pages and social pages that we're on, and one of them posted a meme that, man, I guess you could call it a controversial meme, but basically it was something to the tune of, it was a farmer saying, "Hey, I grow and sell food for money." And society's response to this farmer was, "Your job is important and provides an essential resource." And then the next line says, "I'm a landlord and I maintain and rent homes for money." And society's responses to this, "You can't do that. Shelter's essential, you parasite." And, I thought it would be an opportunity to post it on another page that I follow where I see a lot of activity. It's in a San Marcos local news page. And San Marcos is a college town. There's a lot of younger kids there and a lot of people that I feel like, don't necessarily understand the real estate business and have this idea that landlords are just horrible people that, had their life's mission is just to make people miserable and to put them into their homes and never repair anything and this, that, and the other. And they just, are leeches to society, as they're called. So anyways, I posted it on this page because I frequently see people talking poorly about landlords. And man, did it get a response. I mean, to the tune of a couple hundred comments and all for and against the post. And it was really interesting. So we kind of noticed a few pain points that we were like, this might be an interesting topic to bring up. So stay tuned for that. We're going to talk about the Austin statistics, and then we're going to kind of dive into our Landlords Parasites. But before we get into that, Dad, why don't you let our listeners know what the Chappell Chunk is for today?
Well, if you don't like being a tenant, buy a house.
Facts. Doesn't get any better than that.
Very simple. If you don't like being a tenant, buy a house.
All right, so Dad, let's go ahead and start talking about some of the statistics that you came across for. I guess let's start with the month of April, since that was months past.
Yeah, so I didn't actually do a comparison kind of a thing like we normally do. I just pulled these stats out and thought, okay, this is kind of interesting. So I wanted to talk about Travis County. And for those of you that aren't from Texas, Austin is in Travis County. So Texas has 254 counties. Travis is one of those 254, and it surrounds our capital city, Austin. So with that said, one of the things I found interesting was that the home sales, the actual number of sales increased 46.8%.
From last year?
From last year. 46.8%, which is baffling to me because we have no inventory. How can the sales increase when we have no inventory? It's mind-boggling. And we'll get into that in a minute because just that statement alone, we have no inventory, yet we still have record sales. That is interesting. So we'll come back to that in a second. The other thing is that while the sales volume spiked 104.4%, the total sales volume to 1,226,240,000. The median price of homes increased 37.8% to $537,500. That is the median price of a home in Austin, Texas right now in Travis County. So in Williamson County, April home sales increased 34% to 1,219 over the same time last year. The dollar volume soared 92.3% to $573,488,000.
Hold on. I want to talk about Williamson versus Travis. How much did it go up from Travis County versus Williamson County?
Travis went up 104%.
And Williamson went up 93?
Yes. Now, Travis County is much larger than Williamson County as far as population and all. I mean, Travis County is much more populated. So with that, to see these kinds of numbers is truly mind-boggling. But here's another median statistic. So remember, Travis County, median home price, $537,500. In Williamson County, median home price, $430,000. So for people that don't understand, Williamson County is it's north of Travis County. It's also full of a ton of smaller suburbs of Austin. So in Austin proper, home prices have been up for a long time. So to hear that $537,000 year over year, that really isn't that big of a jump. It is, but it's more understandable for me.
A little bit more expected, I guess.
A little bit more expected, correct. Now, when you're talking about Williamson County, to see that number jump up to 430, mind you, when I moved to Williamson County almost 6 years ago, it was 320,000, and now we're already up to 430,000. That is just mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. Now, I did pull up some other statistics for the month of May. So one of the things that we talk about frequently is the cost or the closing price versus listing price. And one of the gauges that we use to monitor how well a home is priced is typically in the Ybor, Austin area, when we sell a home, most of the time, previously, this year is the exception, okay? I have to qualify that. But previous to this year, if we could sell a home 97, 98% of whatever the list price was, that's the sweet spot. So typically that's what we would find. So if you have a house listed for say $300,000, typically we would have it under contract for 97% of that $300,000. Usually somewhere around $291. Okay? That's not the case anymore. Now we're looking at 106 to 107% of the list price.
On average.
On average. But and this statistic isn't really there, but you and I already know this from the number of homes that we've gotten under contract and from the number of listings that we've gotten under contract. Almost every home is going for 15 to 20% above listing price if the home is priced right.
Yep.
It's got to be priced right. And now there's a science that we've put together a strategy to help us determine the price. And the strategy that we've used has been very effective. However, it's also kind of misleading. We think that the house is going to sell for $350 because that's where we price it, right? That's not where it's going to sell. It's usually going to sell 20% above that. Think about that. 15 to 20% above that. That is normal now.
So some people might argue, well, Roger, if you're listing it that low and it's going for that much over, then how can you say that that's priced correctly?
That's a great question. And the way we know that is because when we see other homes that are priced incorrectly at where they're probably going to sell for, they don't sell. Now, here's another little misnomer. What does that mean, and how do we know that it's not going to sell for that price? So in the past, if we had a home that is set on the market for 30 days and we hadn't had an offer on it, then we knew that the house was priced too high. Now, if the home isn't under contract after the first weekend, we know that it's priced too high. So if I list a house on Thursday, I better have a contract by Sunday. And I will probably have multiple contracts if we price the home correctly. And when I say we, it's a collaboration between me as the listing agent and the client as the seller. So it's the seller sets the price. Hopefully they listen to our professional advice and they price it where they should. However, there are some who don't, who think that their idea is probably where it's going to be, so they'll list a house higher. So we work for them, so we list the house higher. And then it sits on the market for 23 days. In today's market, that is a lifetime.
It really is. And I think the other thing that we kind of need to know is consumer behavior, right?
Yep.
Because it's about perceived value. Right now, I don't know anybody who doesn't know that the real estate market is just blowing up. And everybody's perception is, okay, if this house is priced here, it's going to sell for 10, 15, 20% more than that. So if you price it where you think it's going to sell at, people are going to look at that and be like, oh, well, we're not going to be able to afford that because it's going to go so much higher than list price. So, it's one of those things where you have to watch what the consumer is doing and you have to watch what's happening in the rest of the market, and you have to kind of play into that because, that's what the consumer is thinking. They're looking at all these other homes selling for so much more, and they're just like, oh my gosh, if it's priced, I'm looking at 400 as my max. Well, 325 is my budget. If you're already listed at 400, you're not even on my radar.
That's exactly right. And that also comes with us setting the expectation early and letting our buyers know. I mean, right now, how many buyers do we have that cannot purchase in today's market? Well, they can't right now. So they're literally sitting in our drip campaigns. We're staying in touch with them. We're doing what we can, trying to keep them positive and let them know, hey, hopefully this will turn. In the meantime, we're helping them and guiding them and coaching them, and hopefully they're disciplined enough to continue to save and things like that, because hopefully in another 6 months or so, we're talking about something different. Who knows? I mean, honestly, we don't know. My crystal ball is broken.
I think everybody's is.
Shattered a couple of months ago. So one of the other things that I noticed too, this is a graph that I found for the month of May, and literally this is the May of this year. The median price is now $450,000. Remember, for April it was $430,000. Now it's $450,000. Now this is for Williamson County. And then the days on market, 5 days. 5 days, folks. That means Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it's under contract. Or sometimes we put them on Thursday, and by Monday it's under contract. That's typically how this works now. So 5 days. If it goes longer than 5 days, it's likely something's going on with that price point. It's probably set too high. Could be. There could be some other factors involved in that, but most of the time it'll be because it's priced too high. And then just a little while ago, I pulled up our stats to see there were 2,350 active listings, and this was as of about 3 o'clock this afternoon. So that's actually up on a Monday afternoon. To see that number that high, which is still mind-boggling. That's actually a high number considering today's market. So just wanted to throw that out there a little bit, give everybody something to think about. We're still seeing these numbers are mind-boggling. We keep using the same phrases over and over.
I mean, there's no other words. There are no other words. You can't, even now, we're seeing it, especially since my fiance and I are in the market, seeing it from, the perspective of the seller. We just closed on our house last month, and then being the buyer, it kind of gives you a different perspective on, we help buyers and sellers every day, but it's a little bit different when you go through it yourself and then you realize, oh wow, this is really stressful. If as a buyer right now, it's just crazy. It's absolutely insane. So, the statistics, the proof is in the pudding, right? That's what they say.
That's exactly right. The proof is in the pudding. Yeah, and I'm not making this up. This is coming directly off of MLS. So, yeah, it's crazy.
Well, let's go ahead and, let's start talking about this, the topic of the day, right? Are landlords parasitic? So I'm just going to come out and say, I think absolutely not. I think landlords provide an incredibly essential service. And I hear all these people saying landlords don't have skills and they don't have any value and all this, that, and the other. I really respectfully disagree. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I definitely disagree. I'm one of those landlords. And, I'm not one of those landlords, but I'm one of the landlords that by many would be considered a parasite. However, I can give a perfect example. Just today, One of our tenants, I think it was Friday, mentioned something about the air conditioning had stopped working. So we have a home warranty for the home, and they went and filed all that, and was able to get that actually repaired today. And that was immediate. That was one of those things that my wife and I literally stopped what we were doing to try to help them out. And the way we look at it is, I mean, anytime we have tenants living in our property, we take good care of our properties. We just do. We maintain the air conditioning system. If a plumbing leak happens, then we do the right thing and make sure that the proper repairs are done. We don't try to shortcut anything. And the way I look at it is, if I shortcut it and if I use a cheaper part or I use cheap labor, I'm going to have to turn right around and address that problem again in the future. But if I do it right and I spend the right money on it, two things are going to happen. Number one, I'm not going to have that problem again for quite a while. Number two, my tenant is going to be extremely happy. And believe me, with the properties that I have, I'm charging top dollar for my properties. So I have top tier clients as well. So when I have top tier tenants leasing my properties, I want to make sure that they're taken care of. At the same time, I want to make sure that the product that I'm putting out to them is exactly as I represent it to be. So, yeah, no, I completely disagree with that. And but it was kind of funny. I mean, some of the comments that you had read to me were actually quite hilarious.
Yeah, there was some really good ones. There were some funny ones. There was some uneducated ones, for lack of a better word. But I mean, I guess to an extent, you know, I've been a renter before. It's been many years, but you know, I've been in the position of being a tenant, and you know, especially I can see the perspective of why some tenants would say landlords are parasitic. I've lived in apartment complexes that, you know, maintenance is definitely dragging their feet going from door to door, taking care of repairs, and you know, they'll do a very quick fix and not a very permanent fix, and it's just something that, you know I'm going to have to call about another couple of weeks later. So what are some of the things that you think people might, you know, I guess have a poor taste in their mouth about the landlord-tenant relationship?
So for some of these properties, they may be older and run down and need an additional amount of repairs or maybe a complete remodel. So what does that remodel look like? Well, it could be anything from new plumbing to new electrical to maybe some paint, you know, who knows, maybe new flooring, maybe a combination of things. Maybe it's just been years since it's been really, truly taken care of. Now, when you're talking multi-units, which I assume most of the folks that were making comments on that usually come from multiple unit properties where that's extremely difficult to maintain. Extremely difficult. I mean, you've got tenants coming and going on a regular basis, especially in a college town. So the upkeep is extremely expensive and very hard to keep up with. So, I mean, I can see part of that. Until the building itself is completely vacant, it's really not cost effective to go in and do the remodel, because there's certain things that are going to take place where you need the entire building to be empty. Plumbing problems, for example. I can't tell you how many remodels I've done on single family where I've found 4 or 5 different types of plumbing in one house. I mean, everything from iron pipes to clay to PVC to copper, and now this other stuff, PEX. And all this combination, and I'm like, what in the world is this? No, we've got to. So now I've got to turn around and completely redo all the plumbing. Well, it's easy to do in a single family. Not easy, and not cheap either, I have to say. But imagine having to do that in a 4-plex or in an 8-unit building. So that's where it gets really expensive. And how long is it going to take to make up for those expenses on an 8-unit building? It's going to take a while. So you can't really afford to have it empty for very long.
Yeah, and I would say that kind of addresses one of the big things that I noticed from that post, that, you know, complaints that people had, was that the, you know, landlords, they don't do anything. They don't, you know, all they do is they have a claim to this property and they give you the right to use that property, and all they do is just sit there and collect cash. Well, to, you know, newsflash to all the tenants out there who aren't familiar with how this works, but that landlord has a mortgage payment on that property. I guarantee you 90% of the rental properties out there, especially on larger multifamily 8, 10, 20, 50 units, those aren't owned outright. those are going to have mortgages on them. They have capital expenditures like roofs and plumbing and ACs and all these other major repairs. They have, the staff, if you're talking about, you have, an apartment building, there are leasing agents, there's maintenance people. I mean, there's a lot of expenses that come along. So I think people forget that real estate is in and of itself a business.
Exactly. It is exactly a business. And in fact, during the pandemic, in Texas anyway, real estate was deemed one of the essential businesses because, exactly like the meme said, people need a place to live. That is a right. That's something that we need a place to live. We all do. So real estate was deemed essential in that regard, and for good reason, truly for good reason. So I think a lot of folks that make those comments simply don't understand what real estate is all about. And, for those that have questions or anything, by all means, reach out to us. We'll be happy to help you out. That's what we do.
Yeah, and that was my favorite thing to do in the comments was like, people are talking about all these big pain points, and I'm like, well, did you look at this perspective? Did you think about this? Is there, even one of them was talking about, how expensive it is and how high the rents are going. And I mentioned, well, have you looked at Killeen? Killeen has 2 and 3 bedroom apartments for, this price. And I was told, oh, so now I have to go deal with the slumlords in these terrible, low cost apartments. And, as we talked about back in the finance episode, right? Sacrifices. So at $700 a month, you're probably not going to have the greatest landlord. Not all landlords are created equally, and as you already kind of mentioned, single family residential homes, the ones that are, I would say I think I saw a statistic somewhere, and I wish I remember where I had seen it because I want to quote it exactly, but I can't. But it was something along the lines of like 30 to 50% of homeowners in the United States would consider themselves to be landlords. And it just got me thinking about your typical landlord is probably just your average Joe, just like you and me, who bought a house in their 20s and, outgrew it or had a new need, went and bought a new house and decided, hey, you know what, that little nest egg that I purchased can make me some money for my retirement. So I'm going to go ahead and put a tenant in there and try to keep building up a little bit of equity. Well, that's your average landlord right there. And, not all landlords are created equally, but sometimes, yeah, you may need to make a sacrifice or two. If you're in a position where, you can't afford $1,000 or $1,500 or $2,000 a month in rent, well, maybe go move somewhere where you can get some cheap rent for a little while and kind of catch things back up. And, you have to be willing to make some of those sacrifices in order to, realize the improvements in the successes that you can have in life. There's some sacrifices required there.
Oh, 100%. 100%. But along with those sacrifices also come benefits and rewards much later on. So, the real estate thing, it's kind of funny how we got into it because it was intentional, but only after we paid off a house. So I never imagined that I would actually truly own a home before 30 years. Never crossed my mind until suddenly we owned a house. And the following year, I had to write a great big fat check to the government because I was no longer getting the same tax deductions as I had carrying a mortgage. I was furious. So that's when your mom and I decided to buy our first rental property. And that is actually the only property that we bought intentionally as a rental property.
Yeah.
Everything else that we've purchased turned into a rental property later on because I saw the value behind it for several reasons. Number one, passive income. Now, passive income does not mean slumlord. Passive income means that somebody else is living in there, and yes, I am making a little bit of money off of it, but then again, it is my investment. I should make money off of it. So don't hate me because I made the right choice.
Well, and let's not pretend like these investments don't come with responsibilities. We've already talked about all the expenses that come along with it. And make no mistake, there are things that need to be done as a landlord. You have to check on your properties. Sometimes you have to go in there and you've got to break open some walls. You've got to do some dirty work and you've got to knock some stuff out. It's one of those things where, maybe it's not your average 9-to-5 job, but there's definitely some risk. There's definitely some a lot of work that goes into it, and it shouldn't be underplayed.
Right. No, I agree wholeheartedly. You know, something else we haven't talked about yet, too, is the difference in the states and tenants' rights. So some of the comments that we heard, to me, spoke loudly and clearly. These folks don't realize how lucky they are to live in Texas. You think I'm kidding? Texas is a landlord right state, pretty much. And I say pretty much because it's a fact. However, you go to California, and it's not. That is a tenant strong state. I have seen and heard horror stories of so many things gone wrong in California where there are comedians that make jokes about this stuff. This stuff is real, though. I remember recently a couple purchased a home and they gave a lease back to the seller in California. Of course, this is during COVID as well. But the seller refused to leave the house. So the buyers bought the house, they closed on it, they owned it, they provided a lease back to the tenants who never paid a dime and never left the house. And in addition, the new owners could not evict them because of the moratorium on evictions during COVID in the state of California. Imagine that, folks. In Texas, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. In Texas, you got to pay to stay. It's just that simple. It's much more landlord friendly, but at the same time, for tenants, I can understand why they get so upset about that. And all I can say to those folks is, if you're having those kinds of problems, you're not with the right the right landlord. You need to change landlords. Change your location, change your attitude.
Absolutely. 100% agree. And I would say, too, to those tenants, maybe it's time you buy.
Absolutely. You don't like being a tenant? Call us. We can help you with that.
Don't like being a tenant? Be a landlord. Give us a call.
Yeah. We're kind of making a little bit of fun of that. But seriously, if you don't like being a tenant because of those things, then truly give us a call. We will get you on the path to home ownership. Whether you use us to buy or sell or not is beside the point. We will get you on the right path so that you can own your own home, and we don't have to have these kind of conversations like this.
And there's a reason why we have a podcast where we get to talk about this stuff. It's not because we want to go and sell everybody their real estate. No, it's because we have realized how beautiful and amazing real estate is, and we want everybody and their brothers to get into it. Yeah, get in here. Like it's a beautiful thing. It is a beautiful thing.
It's a great asset, and it will continue to keep giving. I mean, let's put it this way. My retirement plan, I had really no idea about this when I bought our first rental property back in 2008 or 9. I really had no idea where that would get us today. And now that is truly our part of our retirement plan. It's not the entire retirement plan, but it is one chunk of it, and it's a pretty nice chunk. And it's continuous passive income for as long as that house is there. It's
and
awesome.
I still want to emphasize again that even most of the investments that you've made since then can be attributed to the wealth building that you got from your real estate investments.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. I mean, because we've got equity in so many of these properties now, we can leverage that and use it to get money to do other things. It's crazy. Just because we have the asset, lenders are falling over themselves to give us money. It's awesome. It's fantastic. We've got the assets. We can borrow the money if we want, or we can continue on the path that we're on right now where we have the passive income where none of that isn't going to be necessary.
Yeah.
So, it's crazy.
Yeah, and as our great mentor Brian Buffini always says, it's the number one hedge against inflation.
That is absolutely a fact. So just for everybody to know, we are in inflation right now, and if you want to hedge your bets against inflation, you need to buy real estate. Even though the prices right now, at least in the Austin area, are pretty high, depending on your price point, we can get you something outside of it, and it doesn't have to be your primary residence. You can get into passive income yourself. You can get yourself an investment property, and you'll see over time real estate is a steady incline. It's not always as dramatic as what we've seen recently. I mean, and it's been truly, truly dramatic recently. That is not the norm. The norm is usually 3-4% annually, and over time, I mean, it takes no time at all where you've got tremendous appreciation, and then throughout that time, you're also paying down your principal and your interest on your loan, so that gap is getting bigger and bigger. In addition, once you have a tenant living in there, somebody else is paying all that for you. So your true investment is only whatever percentage you put down on the home. So it really does pay dividends. It's one of the best hedges against the inflation. And if you're a gambler, you like risk, by all means, jump into the stock market. But for me, that's just too risky. You got to stay on top of that.
Yeah, and I was actually, again, I was listening to Brian Buffini, and are you familiar with Peter Schiff? He's a finance guy, but he was talking about Bitcoin and how it's, basically you're not an investor, you're a gambler. Because anything where one person can open their mouth and influence, a drop in cryptocurrency value by 37-40%, how can you consider that currency?
That's not currency.
It's not currency. You can't.
No.
So, Dad, what would you say is the final consensus? Are landlords parasites?
Well, of course, since I am considered one of those parasites, then I'm going to say absolutely not. No, landlords are not all landlords are parasites. Let's say that.
I think that's the real key there is, there are good and bad people, and that stands to reason in any profession, landlords included. So, that pretty much wraps up the episode for today. So, Dad, why don't you show us out of here?
Yeah, so appreciate everybody joining us today. I hope you got a lot out of this. I know Daniel and I enjoy doing this a lot. It is a lot of fun. And I got to say, I want to see some more of these posts. So we mention all the time, if you have an idea for us, please let us know. We want to be able to share that with you and discuss what concerns or questions you may have. We're always open for suggestions. And stumbling onto this thing on Facebook was fantastic. And now I'm going to start really scrolling and not trolling. I don't like that term. But trying to find some additional content. So by all means, look us up on all of our social media. Give us a shout out, and we'll be happy to address some of these other concerns or issues or questions. Anything. It doesn't matter to us. Anything. And with that said, I also want to make sure that you guys understand what I mean about referral. I say this every show, and I mean it. Referral, referral, referral. Just this week alone, I've had 3 referrals from people that I've worked with. And I've got to be honest with you, and I said this sincerely the other day, and I mean it today. And that is, a referral is truly the highest compliment that I can possibly receive. Because that shows me that, if you're willing to, as Brian Buffini says, put your name to it and refer me by putting your name to that referral, then you can bet I'm going to go out of my way to make sure that these clients are very well taken care of. I have an unbelievable team of folks put together that can assist me in areas where I may need the help or whatever. It doesn't matter. Referrals, 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 referrals. I can't say it enough.
Yeah, definitely not. Well, guys, thank you guys again for joining us on the Chappell Real Estate Show. It's always a pleasure being here with you guys. And like you said, we love delivering this content for you. So let us know what more you want to hear about. We'd love to hear from you guys. So give us a call, reach out to us on our social media. And, we'll love to see you guys on next week's episode. Everybody take care and have a great week.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Chappell Real Estate Show. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend and leave us a review. Find us on social media at Chappell Realty Group and online at chappellrealtygroup.com. Until next time.